big goals aren't achieved in giant leaps. They're built with small, consistent steps. Each tiny action brings you closer to the life you've always dreamed of. The Power of Small Steps: How to Achieve Big Goals with Small Actions. Written by Thelric Gravenmore and published by Listen Grow Sleep. Introduction. Have you ever looked at someone who achieved something remarkable and thought, I could never do that? What if I told you that the difference between extraordinary achievement and mediocrity isn't talent or luck, but rather how we approach our goals? What stands between us and achieving even our most ambitious dreams has far less to do with possessing some magical skill or talent, and far more to do with how we approach problems and make decisions to solve them. In this audiobook, I'm going to show you how the continuous and compounding nature of all those millions of small decisions we face daily can have a huge impact on our end results. Even a marginal improvement in our process can lead to extraordinary outcomes. The secret: breaking down seemingly impossible goals into tiny, manageable steps that anyone can take. One small step, followed by another and another, until you've climbed mountains you never thought possible. Let's discover how the power of small steps can transform your life, one decision at a time. Chapter 1. The Art of Breaking Down Big Goals. Imagine being handed a pencil and paper and asked to draw a perfect portrait of a celebrity. Impossible, right? But what if I asked you to draw a simple grey square? Easy enough. And if you can draw one grey square, you can draw 2, 3, or 9. The truth is, if you can draw just one grey square, it would be difficult to argue that you couldn't draw every grey square necessary to replicate an entire image. This is exactly how world-renowned artist Chuck Close creates his masterpieces, by breaking down complex images into simple, manageable squares. Think about it. A portrait that seems impossibly complex becomes achievable when viewed as a collection of simple shapes. Chuck Close didn't become a famous artist because he possessed some magical talent that others lack. He simply developed a system that broke down an intimidating task into manageable pieces. This principle applies to every ambitious goal you've ever dreamed of achieving. When we look at successful people, we often see only the end result: the best-selling author, the Olympic athlete, the business tycoon. What we don't see are the thousands of small steps they took to get there. Take J.K. Rowling, for example. She didn't sit down one day and write the entire Harry Potter series. She wrote one page, one paragraph, one sentence at a time. Some days, she might have only written a few hundred words. In fact, when she started, she was a struggling single mother writing in cafes while her baby napped. But those small steps, taken consistently over time, resulted in one of the most successful book series in history. Or consider how the Great Wall of China was built. At over 13,000 miles long, it's one of humanity's most impressive achievements. Yet it wasn't built in one massive effort. It was constructed brick by brick, section by section, over centuries. Each worker laid just one brick at a time, but together, those individual actions created something extraordinary. The art of breaking down big goals is about shifting your focus from the intimidating summit to the single step in front of you. It's about asking yourself, what's the smallest possible action I can take right now that moves me toward my goal? Instead of saying, I want to lose 50 pounds, you might say, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes today. Instead of, I want to write a book, you might say, I'm going to write one paragraph today. Instead of, I want to start a successful business, you might say, I'm going to make one sales call today. This approach works because it makes starting easier. The resistance to taking a small step is much lower than tackling a massive goal. Provides immediate wins. Each small step completed is a victory that builds momentum, reduces overwhelm. You only need to focus on the next step, not the entire journey. Create sustainable habits. Small actions are easier to maintain consistently. Builds confidence. Success with small steps proves to yourself that you can achieve more. Allows for course correction. Small steps make it easier to adjust your approach as you learn. Think about learning to play a musical instrument. No one sits down at a piano for the first time and plays a concerto. Instead, you learn one note, then another, then how to play them together. You practice scales, then simple songs, gradually building complexity. Each practice session might only improve your skill by a fraction of a percent, but over time, those improvements compound into mastery. Remember, every massive achievement in human history, from building the pyramids to landing on the moon, was accomplished through countless small steps taken one after another. The next time you feel overwhelmed by a big goal, ask yourself, what's the smallest possible step I can take right now? Then take that step, and then another, and another. Before you know it, you'll look back and be amazed at how far you've come. Chapter 2. The Marginal Improvement Principle. Let's talk about the remarkable career of Novak Djokovic. When he first became a professional tennis player in 2004, he was ranked 680th in the world. By the end of his third year, he jumped to third in the world, increasing his earnings from $250,000 to $5 million annually. In 2011, he became the #1 ranked men's tennis player, earning an average of $14 million a year and winning an impressive 90% of his matches. Here's what's fascinating. Novak doesn't control these impressive statistics. What he does control are all the tiny decisions he makes along the way that move the probability in favor of achieving these results. We can track his progress by looking at his decision success rate, the percentage of points he wins. When he was winning about 49% of his matches, he was winning about 49% of the points he played. To jump to number 3 in the world, he improved his decision success rate to just 52%. To become #1, he improved to just 55%. Think about that for a moment. A mere 3% improvement in his decision success rate, from 52% to 55%, was the difference between being the third best tennis player in the world and being the greatest of all time. That's the power of marginal improvement. This is the marginal improvement principle in action. Small incremental improvements that compound over time to produce extraordinary results. The beauty of this principle is that these types of marginal improvements are achievable by every single one of us. You don't need to make dramatic, overnight changes to transform your life. You just need to be slightly better today than you were yesterday. Consider the British cycling team. For nearly a century, British cyclists performed so poorly that top bike manufacturers refused to sell bikes to the team, fearing it would hurt sales. Then, in 2003, Dave Brailsford became the new performance director. He implemented a strategy he called the aggregation of marginal gains, seeking a 1% improvement in everything they did. The team redesigned bike seats for more comfort, tested different massage gels to see which one led to the fastest recovery, and even painted the inside of their truck white to spot dust that might impair the bike's performance. These tiny improvements added up. Within 5 years, British cyclists dominated the sport, winning 60% of the gold medals at the 2008 Olympics and producing the first British winner of the Tour de France. Let's look at another example, Amazon. When the company first started, Jeff Bezos was obsessed with improving the customer experience by tiny increments. He focused on making the website load just a fraction of a second faster, making the checkout process one click simpler, and improving product recommendations by small percentages. Each improvement seemed minor in isolation, but together they created the world's most customer-centric company and made Bezos one of the richest people on the planet. Or consider Warren Buffett, one of the world's most successful investors. His wealth didn't come from a few spectacular investments, but from consistently earning about 2% better returns than the market average, year after year, decade after decade. That small edge, compounded over time, created billions in wealth. The marginal improvement principle works because small improvements are sustainable. You can maintain a 1% improvement far longer than a dramatic overhaul. Compound growth is powerful. A 1% improvement every day for a year makes you 37 times better, not just 365% better. It bypasses resistance. Small changes don't trigger the fear and resistance that big changes do. It creates momentum. Each small win builds confidence for the next improvement. It focuses on process, by concentrating on the inputs you control rather than the outcomes you don't. It's adaptable. Small improvements allow you to adjust course as you receive feedback. The math behind this principle is staggering. If you improve just 1% each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better than when you started. That's because these small improvements compound. Each day, you're getting 1% better than your already improved self from the day before. What area of your life could benefit from a 1% improvement today? Your health, your relationships, your career, your finances? Remember, you don't need to transform everything overnight. Just focus on being marginally better today than you were yesterday. Chapter 3. Becoming an active participant in your decisions. From kindergarten through high school, my report cards all said essentially the same thing. Stephen is a bright young boy, if only he would just settle down and focus. What my teachers didn't realize was that I wanted that even more than they did. I just couldn't do it. As a result, I was a consistent C- student. But going into my junior year of college, I'd had enough. I decided to make a change, not by trying to become someone I wasn't, but by working with who I actually was. I decided to stop being a spectator of my decision-making and start becoming an active participant. Instead of pretending I could suddenly focus for hours at a time, I assumed I couldn't. If I wanted to do well in school, I needed to change my approach. So I made a marginal adjustment. When assigned to read 5 chapters, I wouldn't think of it as 5 chapters or even 1 chapter. I broke it down into tasks I could achieve with just 5 or 10 minutes of focus. Maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs. After completing each small task, I'd take a break, shoot some hoops, draw, or play video games, before returning to another short task. From that point forward, I became a straight A student, making the Dean's List and President's Honor Roll every semester. I then went on to one of the top graduate programs in the world for finance and economics, using the same approach with the same results. Most people would have tried to fix their focus problem by forcing themselves to concentrate longer, setting timers, eliminating distractions, or using willpower to push through. But these approaches fight against natural tendencies rather than working with them. They might work temporarily, but they're rarely sustainable. My approach was different. Instead of trying to change who I was, I changed how I approached the task. I didn't need to become someone who could focus for hours. I just needed to find a way to succeed with the focus I had. Think about how this might apply to other areas of life. If you struggle with maintaining an exercise routine, perhaps the solution isn't to force yourself to spend an hour at the gym, which you hate, but to find 3 10-minute activities throughout the day that you actually enjoy. If you procrastinate on big projects, perhaps the solution is to break them down into 15-minute tasks that don't trigger your resistance. This is what it means to be an active participant in your decisions. It's about accepting your reality rather than fighting against it. Designing systems that work with your nature, not against it. Taking ownership of your process, not just your outcomes. Making conscious choices rather than defaulting to habits or expectations. Recognizing your unique strengths and limitations. Creating environments that support your success rather than sabotage it. This approach transformed my academic life and later my professional career, helping me advance from an exotic derivatives trader to global head of currency option trading to founding award-winning hedge funds. Consider how many people struggle with diets. They try to completely overhaul their eating habits overnight, fighting against decades of established patterns and biological cravings. Is it any wonder that 95% of diets fail? A more effective approach might be to make one small change that works with your current habits. Perhaps eating the same foods but using smaller plates or adding 1 vegetable to each meal before changing anything else. Or think about saving money. Many people try to create elaborate budgets that require tracking every penny, a system that demands tremendous discipline and focus. A more sustainable approach might be to set up automatic transfers to savings accounts on payday, requiring no ongoing decision-making at all. The key insight is that you don't need to become a different person to achieve different results. You just need to become aware of your decision-making process and make intentional adjustments that work with your natural tendencies. What area of your life are you currently a spectator rather than an active participant? Where are you trying to force yourself to be someone you're not, rather than designing systems that work with who you are? Becoming an active participant in your decisions means taking responsibility for your process, recognizing that while you can't control all outcomes, you can control the small decisions that influence those outcomes. Chapter 4: Transforming Daily Habits into Extraordinary Results. In 2001, I had a realization. The approach of breaking down big goals and making marginal improvements had worked well for me in school and my professional life. Why wasn't I applying it to my personal goals? One day, walking to work through Hyde Park in London, a 45-minute commute each way, totaling 7.5 hours a week or 360 hours a year, I realized I was wasting time just listening to music. So I stopped at a store, bought the first 33 CDs in the Pimsleur German language program, and loaded them onto my iPod. But I didn't stop there. Knowing myself as an undisciplined person who would likely switch back to music, I removed that temptation by deleting all the music. This left me with just one option: listen to the language tapes. This decision reflects a profound understanding of human psychology. Most of us try to rely on willpower to make changes, but willpower is a finite resource that depletes quickly. By removing the option to listen to music, I wasn't depending on willpower at all. I was changing my environment to make the desired behavior the path of least resistance. 10 months later, I had listened to all 99 CDs in the program, 3 times each. I then took a 16-day intensive German course in Berlin. When my family joined me afterward, I spoke German to the locals, and they responded in German. My kids were amazed, but there was nothing amazing about what I'd done. I had simply made a marginal adjustment to my daily routine, transforming wasted time into productive time. And now, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. I speak a little German. Think about your own life. How much dead time do you have that could be repurposed? The average American spends over 2 hours a day on social media and nearly 4 hours watching television. That's 42 hours a week, the equivalent of a full-time job. Even reclaiming a fraction of that time could lead to extraordinary results. This experience made me wonder, what other ambitious goals had I been putting off that I could achieve through similar marginal adjustments to my routine? So I started pursuing them, earning my auto racing license, learning to fly helicopters, rock climbing, skydiving, and aerobatic flying. Each of these achievements didn't require me to dramatically overhaul my life or find huge blocks of free time. They simply required me to identify opportunities within my existing schedule and make small adjustments to how I used that time. In 2007, I moved back from London about 25 pounds overweight and out of shape. Instead of taking the typical route, joining a gym I'd never visit, or swearing off foods I love, I thought about my existing habits and passions. I had been walking 90 minutes daily for 7 years and loved being outdoors. So rather than setting a resolution to lose 25 pounds, I set a goal to hike all 33 trails in the front country of Santa Barbara Mountains, something I'd never done before. By the end of the year, I'd hiked all 33 trails multiple times, lost the 25 pounds, and completed the challenging Pier to Peak half marathon. Notice the psychological shift here. Instead of focusing on what I wanted to lose, weight, I focused on what I wanted to gain. Experiences hiking beautiful trails. Instead of depriving myself, I was enriching my life. The weight loss became a side effect of pursuing something I genuinely enjoyed. This approach works because it aligns with how our brains are wired. We're much more motivated by the pursuit of pleasure than the avoidance of pain. When we frame our goals in terms of what we'll gain rather than what we'll lose, we tap into more sustainable sources of motivation. Consider how this might apply to financial goals. Instead of thinking, I need to stop spending so much money, focusing on deprivation, you might think, I'm saving for a dream vacation, focusing on gain. The behavior might be the same, spending less, but the psychological framing is completely different. The key to transforming daily habits into extraordinary results is identifying dead time in your schedule that could be repurposed, connecting new goals to existing habits and passions, removing competing options that might tempt you off course, focusing on the process, hiking trails, rather than the outcome, losing weight, framing goals in terms of gains rather than losses, designing your environment to make desired behaviors easier, leveraging the power of consistency over time. What daily habits do you already have that could be slightly adjusted to serve a bigger goal? What dead time exists in your schedule that could be repurposed? Remember, you don't need to create entirely new routines. Often, the most sustainable changes come from tweaking what you already do. Chapter 5: Overcoming Obstacles Through Small Steps. In 2009, I set an ambitious goal for someone who still, to this day, cannot settle down and focus for more than 10 minutes at a time, to read 50 books in 1 year. Most people would consider this impossible. After all, if you struggle to focus for more than 10 minutes, how could you possibly read 50 books? The average book takes 6 to 8 hours to read. Multiply that by 50 and you're looking at 300 to 400 hours of focused reading. For someone with attention challenges, that sounds like an insurmountable obstacle. But as with any goal, it's not about reading 50 books. It's not even about reading one book, a chapter, or a paragraph. It's about that decision when you're sitting at your desk at the end of the day, or lying on your couch scrolling through social media, and you put down your phone. You pick up a book and read one word. If you read one word, you'll read 2 words, 3 words. You'll read a sentence, a paragraph, a page, a chapter, a book. You'll read 10 books, 30 books, 50 books. This approach, focusing on the smallest possible step, is particularly powerful when facing obstacles. When we encounter resistance, our natural tendency is to push harder or give up entirely. But there's a third option: make the step smaller. Think about the most common obstacles people face when pursuing goals. I don't have enough time. Break it down to 5-minute increments. I don't have enough energy. Make the first step so small it requires almost no energy. I don't know how. Learn just one small aspect of the skill. I'm afraid of failing. Make the step so small that failure is virtually impossible. I'm not motivated. Focus on actions so tiny they don't require motivation. In 2012, I set 24 New Year's resolutions. 12 giving resolutions involving charitable acts, and 12 learning resolutions to acquire new skills. After learning unicycling, parkour, slacklining, jumping stilts and drumming, my wife suggested I learn to knit. Though not particularly passionate about knitting, one day while hiking, I had an idea. What if I covered a 40-foot eucalyptus tree with yarn? I discovered this was called yarn bombing, and the second annual International Yarn Bombing Day was just 82 days away. For the next 82 days, no matter where I was, in board meetings, on trading floors, in airplanes or hospitals, I was knitting, one stitch at a time. And 82 days later, I completed my first yarn bomb. Notice the pattern here. I didn't set aside special knitting time or try to complete the project in a few intensive sessions. I simply integrated tiny actions, individual stitches, into the margins of my day. I didn't need to find time, I just needed to use the time I already had differently. The response was so positive that I continued with increasingly ambitious projects. In 2014, I set a goal to wrap 6 massive boulders in Los Padres National Forest. With help from thousands of social media followers who sent contributions from 36 countries and all 50 states, I ended up wrapping not 6 but 18 massive boulders. These projects led to working with new materials like fiberglass, wood and metals, culminating in wrapping the Children's Hospital in Tucson. Along the way, I discovered I preferred crocheting to knitting and eventually set the Guinness World Record for the largest crocheted granny square, over 500,000 stitches incorporating more than 30 miles of yarn. This journey illustrates another important principle. Starting small doesn't mean staying small. Often, the momentum generated by small steps leads to achievements far greater than we initially imagined. My simple decision to learn knitting eventually led to a Guinness World Record and art installations that brought joy to thousands of people. The same principle applies to any obstacle you're facing. Want to write a book? Start with 1 sentence a day. Want to run a marathon? Begin with a 1-minute jog. Want to start a business? Make 1 sales call or create 1 product. The key lessons for overcoming obstacles. When facing resistance, make the steps smaller. Read 1 word, knit 1 stitch. Consistency matters more than intensity. Doing a little every day beats doing a lot occasionally. Community can amplify your efforts. Don't be afraid to share your journey and invite others to join. Embrace unexpected directions. My knitting project evolved into a world record in crocheting. Use the margins of your day. Small steps can fit into spaces you didn't know existed. Start small, but don't stay small. Let momentum carry you to bigger achievements. Focus on process over outcomes. Concentrate on the next stitch, not the finished project. What obstacle are you currently facing? How could you break down your next step into something so small that it becomes almost impossible to say no to? Chapter 6. The compound effect of consistent action. Throughout this audiobook, we've explored how small steps and marginal improvements can lead to extraordinary results. Now, let's examine why this approach works so powerfully. The compound effect. The compound effect is the strategy of reaping huge rewards from small, seemingly insignificant actions. Just as money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. The same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. Consider these examples. If you improve by just 1% each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better by the end of the year. If you read just 10 pages a day, you'll read 3,650 pages, about 12 books, in a year. If you save just $5 a day, you'll have $1,825 at the end of the year. The compound effect works in all areas of life: health, wealth, skills, relationships. But it requires 2 essential elements: consistency and time. Consistency is critical because the compound effect rewards those who show up day after day. Missing 1 day isn't a problem, but missing several breaks the compound chain. This is why focusing on small, manageable steps is so important. They're easier to perform consistently. Time is the other crucial element. The compound effect doesn't deliver dramatic results in days or weeks. Like a bamboo plant that appears to do nothing for 4 years before growing 90 feet in 6 weeks, the compound effect often works invisibly until it reaches a tipping point. This explains why so many people give up on their goals. They put in weeks or months of effort without seeing significant results, not realizing they might be just days or weeks away from a breakthrough. My journey to becoming a Guinness World Record holder didn't happen overnight. It took 2 years, 7 months, and 17 days, 1 stitch at a time. There were countless moments when I could have given up, when the end seemed too far away, but by focusing on just the next stitch, the smallest possible step, I eventually created something extraordinary. The compound effect teaches us that small actions, repeated consistently, create exponential results. The most powerful results often come after a long period of seemingly minimal progress. Patience and persistence are as important as the actions themselves. The focus should be on the system, daily actions, rather than the goal, end result. Where in your life are you overlooking the power of small, consistent actions? What tiny habit could you start today that, compounded over time, might lead to extraordinary results? Chapter 7. Applying the small steps method to your life. Throughout this audiobook, we've explored how breaking down ambitious goals into small steps and making marginal improvements can lead to extraordinary achievements. Now it's time to apply these principles to your own life. First, remember that I'm still that C- student. I'm still that kid who can't settle down or focus for more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. I remain a person who possesses no special gift of talent or skill. All I do is take really big, ambitious projects that people seem to marvel at, break them down to their simplest form, and then make marginal improvements along the way to improve my odds of achieving them. You can do the same. Here's how to apply the small steps method to your life. Identify your ambitious goals. What dreams have you put on the shelf because they seem too big or impossible? What would you pursue if you knew you couldn't fail? Write these down. Break down. For each ambitious goal, ask yourself, what's the smallest possible step I could take toward this goal? Remember, it should be so small that it feels almost trivial. Reading one word, knitting one stitch, walking for 5 minutes. Design your environment. Set yourself up for success by designing your environment to make the small steps easier and the distractions harder. Remember how I deleted all the music from my iPod to ensure I'd listen to the language tapes? What temptations could you remove? Become an active participant. Stop being a spectator in your own life. Recognize your patterns and tendencies, then design systems that work with them rather than against them. If you know you get bored quickly, plan for very short bursts of activity with breaks in between. Focus on decisions, not outcomes. Remember Novak Djokovic. He doesn't control whether he wins matches, but he does control the small decisions that influence the probability of winning. What decisions could you focus on improving by just 1 to 2%? Connect to existing habits. Like my decision to use my daily walks to learn German, look for existing habits or dead time that could be repurposed toward your goals. Embrace the compound effect. Trust that small, consistent actions will compound over time. Don't expect immediate results, but know that if you keep taking those small steps, extraordinary achievements await. Remember, it's not about the decisions at the top of the mountain. It's about the decision you make when you're on the couch. If you don't make the right decision when you're on the couch, there is no decision to make at the top of the mountain. I hope this audiobook inspires you to pull some of those ambitious dreams off the shelf and start pursuing them by making marginal adjustments to your routine. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step and continues with thousands more small steps after that. What small step will you take today?